Welcome to the World of Horror Podcast, Season 3, Episode 1. I'm Mom.
And I'm Mac.
And this is the podcast where we share our love of international horror and sometimes thrillers too. Fear is universal, but we are not afraid of subtitles. A disclaimer, we aren't experts on these films, but that won't stop us from expressing our opinions on them. Also, these discussions will include spoilers for sure. WoHos, to kick off our third season, we have a special episode planned. We wanted to spotlight two of Mac's favorite movies. This week, Mac has chosen Park Chan-wook's The Handmaiden and Bong Joon-ho's Mother. Let's move on to our first segment, Mom and Mac Chat. Hi, Mac. How's it going?
It's going pretty good, Mom. We were talking before we hit record, and I was saying it's hot as hell. It is. It's kind of. I was outside. I went to the grocery store, and in that time, I just was soaked in sweat, feeling disgusting. Branwen is in a horrible mood all the time. I think it's because it's hot.
Yeah, probably. She can't.
What can she do?
She's got a fur coat on. What can she do?
She'll just lay in the middle of the floor. And which she does not. So that must be like the coldest place to sit.
Yeah.
I feel bad for her.
Yeah, I hate summer.
Me too. It's nasty.
It's so gross. And like this morning I went for a hike with my friend in the woods. Let's see. We started at 7:30. We hiked for 2 hours. Mm-hmm. And I haven't done anything else really the rest of the day.
It exhausts you.
Yeah. I always like hesitate to talk to her about like food and body issues, but then I inevitably do because she's not judgmental and she's just very nice. And I've just been feeling really like down about things. And she's like, "You look amazing. You're working really hard. And you just have to remember that every time you come out here, you're doing something nice for yourself. And remember, be kind to yourself because stress puts on the weight." And she's just like...
What a sweetie.
A little baby angel.
What an absolute sweetie pie.
She's just super nice. And then if I pay her a compliment, she's like, "Oh, I like the way that sounds."
That's really sweet. That's so nice. Which sounds like such a pleasant person.
Oh, she's a joy. And it's funny because I really wouldn't have predicted that we would have become friends. Mm-hmm. But they put me with her to mentor her because it was her first year teaching last year. She's just a natural, you know, really smart and really talented, lots of creative ideas, very dedicated. And so it's easy, you know, to be her friend. And it's nice to have a friend. And I can talk philosophy with her if I want. Or we can just talk about just stuff. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So she's a fun person to know.
Mm-hmm. That's lovely.
Yeah. And then Quinn's always like, "How's your..."
Like sitting at home in the living room, you open up the door, she turns on the light in the living room. Like, "How is hanging out with your friend?"
Exactly.
We love you, Quinn.
We love you, Quinn. Yeah, she was so funny because she... I can't remember how it came up, but she was like, "Oh yeah, I found out that my friends really didn't like high spirits. I found out about it on a podcast."
Quinn. Quinn, if you're listening, I love you so much.
I love her so much too. She is going to Michigan.
Ooh, hopefully it'll be colder. Maybe.
I mean, I think it's hot all over right now.
Let me show you. My friend, sweet friend Rachel, stayed with me. And I love Rachel, but man, does she love to walk. And and she loves it when it's hot. Like, she prefers it to be hot. I know. That's what I said. I was like, "I love you, but I don't understand. But I respect." But we went out and walked so much. And I got the worst sunburn on my shoulder, but now it's like so tan, only in one space. Wait, well, I guess it's over camera.
Ugh. Oh, I can see
You can see, especially on my neck, like the difference.
Yeah.
So now I got a farmer's tan.
Nice. The only tanning I get is at boot camp. Because I wear a tank top. So, but did you want to talk about spontaneous, or did you want to talk
Sure.
about...
I'd love to. Okay, so I'll tell you how I just found it. I was searching for something to watch while working, and I kept on clicking things, and I was like, this looks good. And then I just saw spontaneous, and it was just the word. Like, that was what the poster looked like. And I really, in my head, I was like, what is this shit? And I clicked on it, and then I was like, okay, students exploding. I'm interested. And I really was not expecting to love it so gosh darn much, but it really was, in my opinion, like an amazing movie. I loved how all the characters were dealing with it, about how the main girl, like was making jokes, but then it's like, it wouldn't have had the emotional impact if every time somebody exploded, the characters were really like, oh my God, like really upset. It was never like, hey, he just exploded. It's always like, this is horrible. But then, later when they're, because I mean, you can't, if you just sat there like, this is horrible, you would never, get through anything, so then they're able to, and after it's like a brief period of like, okay, well, nothing's really happening, you feel safe to joke about it again, and then it happens again. Like, I don't know. I mean, obviously, to me, the thing felt like a really big allegory for like school shootings and stuff, and like the pressure students have to deal with that. But I mean, also, just as somebody who has never, I mean, I really haven't had to deal with death that much in my life, like the loss of like loved ones, or I mean, or somebody my age. I've just never really had to deal with that personally. I just think that the movie had a really like healthy attitude towards grief and death. And like Dylan, when she, he's able to, make jokes about it, but he's like, yeah, I was really sad. And like, this is what I did when I was really sad. And it was the only thing that I could do to make me feel better. And then I just felt like all the characters loved each other and were listening to each other. And it just made my heart, really soft. And when she's talking to Dylan's mom and she's like, are you okay? And the mom just is like, no, but she's like, I gotta, just keep going,
That was really my favorite part. And that, because to me, I was thinking about the pandemic, and then I was thinking about Cole's death and how, like, especially when the mom did her monologue. Yeah, people were like, how could this happen? My friend Cole died, and he was like, not even 40. And I said, cancer. There's this thing in the world that we live with called cancer, and it gets some of us, and that sucks, but that's life. Like she said, that's just life. So, and then she also said that thing about, did you hear about that guy who fell into the sinkhole? And it's like, shit happens all over the place to all kinds of people all over the world. And it sucks, but you got to just keep going. And I thought that was a really great message. Like, I don't really feel like it was just like so clearly spelled out. And also I just liked the kids. Like,
me too.
Their chemistry was amazing.
I really loved her and Dylan. Like, I thought that they were so sweet together. And what was I going to say? Oh, like, there was that period where, I don't want to spoil, because I saw it coming, but I still was like, it still hits you really hard. I mean, that scene was really amazingly done too, when like all she sees is red. For
a while.
Yeah, it was a long time, and it's silent. I really liked, she's really destructive with her grieving, which makes sense because she's 17, about to be 18, having to deal with the multiple horrific deaths that she's felt and experienced. Makes total sense. And when she was talking to the mom and she says, I'm really sorry. And when Dylan told you that, I was throwing up because I was on shrooms, like, did you think like, oh, this girl's trouble? And she said, no, I just thought this is a person who's really hurting. And that really hit me, because I feel like horror movies especially, and thrillers, they gloss over a lot of the long-lasting trauma of violence. And
Yeah.
I think this movie really did a good job. I mean, how everybody who lived had like intense survivor's guilt, like at the end. Like I loved that scene where everybody was like, it was me, it was all my fault, you know, because all of them must have been thinking like, what, you know, why am I alive? You know? And I don't know. I just thought it was really well done and really beautiful.
Yeah, me too. And, you know, the fact that she goes on this alcoholic binge, or she just stays in bed, and, you know, her parents are just like pleading with her to like come out of her room. And, but that makes all kinds of sense to me. Just like, what are you going to do? Like, what is she going to do? There's no way for her to numb her feelings, you know, except through alcohol. And I love it that she's just like stealing it, and then the people in the supermarket are like, well, yeah, I mean,
and I loved that too. I loved that I really loved her relationship with her parents of, you know, when they're like, what is wrong with you? And she's like, oh, well, my boyfriend and all my friends died. And it's like, yeah, that's traumatic. You know, you think you're a ticking time bomb. Like, that's pretty horrible.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was thinking about the pandemic too, because like for a while, we didn't understand the virus at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's like super scary and super stressful. And the whole world was going through it at the very same time. So I think this came out at a perfect time because it just hit so hard. Like, I feel like everyone can relate to this.
Yeah.
And in some way, and if it's not the pandemic, you know, it could be like school shooting, like you said, or just death or just tragedy that we see in our lives. And it's like, doesn't make any sense. There's no justice. But yeah, there's no justice. Get used to it. It's just like, it's just the way the world is, you know?
Yeah.
And so frustrating because, you know, you want to explain it and there's just no explanation. And I like that too. Like they never explained like why this happened.
Yeah. I liked that a lot too. Just a great movie. Watch it. Hulu. Wait, is it on Hulu?
It's free on Hulu.
No excuse.
But Mac, do you want to get into it?
Let's get into it. All right. So when Mom asked me what are two of your favorite movies, I knew one of them had to be The Handmaiden, which I watched. I think I watched it. Did I watch it this year or last year?
This year.
Yeah. Okay. So it is a new watch for me. This is my second time watching it. Loved it. So, okay. The Handmaiden, also known as Lady. It is a 2016 South Korean erotic psychological thriller film directed by Park Chan-wook and starring Kim Min-hee, Kim Tae-ri, Ha Jung-woo, and Cho Jin-woong. It is inspired by the 2002 novel Fingersmith by Welsh writer Sarah Waters, and the setting was changed from Victorian-era Britain to Korea under Japanese colonial rule in the 1930s. And I have not read the book. Apparently there's a lot of other changes, and when they sent the script to the writer, she said, I really like it, but you have to say that this was inspired by, you know, it's not really a remake or anything. So, okay. Well, okay, so just to go over who everyone is, like I said, Park Chan-wook was the director, who also directed Thirst, the Vengeance series, Old Boy,
I feel like we're forgetting something, but
he's amazing.
I can put his filmography in the notes.
There we go. It was written by Park Chan-wook and Jong Seo-kyung, and it stars Kim Min-hee as Lady / Izumo Hideko, Kim Tae-ri as Nam Suki, Ha Jung-woo as Count Fujiwara, and Ko Jin-woong as Uncle Kuzuki. So, this movie is amazing. And I mean, I honestly have to say, I do want you to listen to the podcast, but if you have not watched it, I really think you should watch it without knowing a single thing that happens, because it is a freaking whirlwind and you'll still enjoy it. Cause I mean, I still enjoyed watching it over again, but when I was first watching it, I remember being like, what? And I wouldn't want to take that away from anybody. And yeah, I had some new revelations, a lot of new thoughts. I really like a lot of what this movie has to say. So, okay, I'm going to get into the plot. So it's very plot heavy. Essentially, the movie opens with the fact that there's a con man, Count Fujiwara, who wants to cheat an heiress out of her fortune. He recruits a pickpocket, Nam-suki, and she is going to pose as the handmaiden and convince the heiress, Hideko Izumi, to marry him. The story of Hideko is that she, because there was some question like, she's not married. No, she lives with her uncle. He's an absolute creep who is a Korean man who's obsessed with Japanese culture, so much so that he wants to he's basically LARPing as a Japanese man. And we'll learn more about him later, but basically he married Hideko's aunt, and Hideko's mom died while giving birth to her. And then the aunt also dies. And then the uncle raises Hideko basically to be his future wife so that he can get her fortune, among other things. But again, we'll get into it. That's really putting it plainly. Her uncle, he has a really huge rare book collection, which has originals and forgeries. He is employing this Count Fujiwara because he loves these books so much. Instead of auctioning them off, he wants to make forgeries so that he can keep the originals but still make money. What? He is so obsessed with Japan. And I gotta say from the get, as somebody who in my middle school days was also obsessed with Japan, like I know I'm not an old creepy uncle, trying to LARP as a Japanese man, but there is, when you talk to a lot of people who aren't Japanese but are really into Japanese culture, a lot of people really do fetishize it in this really horrible way that is totally not fair to just Japanese people and Japanese culture as a whole. And I think this movie does like a really good job even talking about that, because I mean, it just kind of shows how ridiculous this guy is. Like he's talking to Count Fujiwara and he's like, Japan's beautiful. I love Japan, and Korea's ugly. And the Count says, I mean, there's probably Japanese people who think that Japan is ugly and Korea is beautiful. And the guy's just like, no. And it's just, hey, y'all, don't fetishize other cultures. The uncle, he forces Hideko to perform readings of some of these original works of erotic fiction, and then he auctions them off. And the reading is its own really structured thing. So the uncle has conspired with Japan to annex Korea in return for a gold mine. And so the uncle's house is built half in a Western style and half in a traditional Japanese style, which the maid does not hesitate to tell us, not even Japan has homes like this. It has like electricity. Well, not gas lamps. I don't know. I think it has electricity. So, okay.
Yeah, it's 1930s.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. But I remember the maid was like, it's cool that it has this. So, yeah. So Suki, she's undercover. It's her first night. She has to stay in this little cupboard that's right, across, basically a parallel wall to the ladies' room. So her first night, Hideko has a nightmare. She starts screaming. Suki gives her sake, saying that when she was living with her aunt, she would always give the baby sake to make them fall asleep, which I love. And she's taken care of a lot of children. She's a really interesting character. Like from the beginning, she just has really fascinating lines. Like when we're learning about Suki's life, she's talking about she works with this other, because they basically take care of babies and give them away for people to have heirs. It's a very interesting process. But she cares for these children just in a really, like, she loves caring for children. And I just remember this one specific line. She's talking about another girl that she works with, and she's like, she only breastfeeds her own child. She refuses to breastfeed any of the other ones. And I just think that's selfish. I wish that my breast produced milk because I would feed them all. Like, it's just a really, like, she just loves to take care of things. But she's like very fiery and just a great character. So she sings a Korean lullaby to Hideko. And Hideko says that her aunt's ghost appears on moonless nights because there's a cherry tree right in view of Hideko's room. And that's where her aunt hung herself. Okay.
Or so we think.
So Hideko, she tells Suki that she's been in this house since she was 5. The house is dark. There's no light allowed to be let in because light could damage the books, and she's not allowed to leave. She is a prisoner. Suki gives Hideko a reference letter. Hideko asks her to read it because she's like, oh, I've been reading too much all day. And Suki is illiterate, so she cannot read. So she first is like, oh my gosh, this is a great recommendation. And Hideko's like, well, what is it? And she's like, I can't read. She can't read Japanese or Korean. Hideko then tells Suki, listen, you can steal, you can curse, but just don't ever lie to me. And Suki, of course, says, oh, I would never. Hideko has to do her reading practice in the Japanese part of the house. Suki stays behind and looks through Hideko's things because she's just really into beautiful things. Like she's a pickpocket. She has an eye for gorgeous things. And when Suki then goes to retrieve Hideko, there's a gate that closes like automatically from a switch that does not allow her to go into the room. And the uncle says that there's like this little metal snake blocking the way. And he says that the snake indicates the bounds of knowledge. And I mean, okay, I mentioned this before we started recording. The one thing I don't think this movie does very well is the man who plays the uncle is not old. And he basically has like the worst old man makeup I've ever seen. It's horrible. He has these, pasted on eyebrows. The hair, he's clearly not, doesn't have white hair. But the detail that I do really like is he's always using his ink pen. And so he's always dabbing it on his tongue. So his tongue is black. Oh, he's just a disgusting man. So then we get to a scene with a bath. This is kind of one of the first scenes where you begin to think, this movie's pretty gay, huh? And I mean that in a good way. So Suki is giving Hideko a bath. She gave her a lollipop. She's been infantilizing her this whole time. And Hideko says, oh, I've got this tooth that hurts me. And you would not believe that a scene of a girl filing down somebody's tooth with a thimble would be sexual, but it completely is.
Oh, baby.
And I mean, Park Chan-wook does a really, because I want to say, like, I'm not going to say that this movie has a complete absence of the male gaze. Like, I mean, a lot of it is talking about the male gaze itself, but like, I'm not going to say that, the camera isn't showing off how beautiful these women are, but the way that it's conveying sexual tension to me is very, very good. Like, you get a really close zoom in of Suki's mouth, like she's sweating and she like keeps licking her lips because she's just like so nervous to be so close to Hideko, who's naked in the bath. And I mean, she's got her finger in Hideko's mouth, and Hideko's kind of like touching her like arm a little bit. It's very, very like erotic. And it's a beautiful scene. So then, she's going to start working with Count Fujiwara to get Hideko to fall in love with him. So the Count tells Suki that when he gives the cue fully ripe, he's going to push the marriage plot. So Hideko meets the uncle and the Count for dinner. She wears this beautiful gown and has one of my favorite lines where Suki just says, out of everything that I've ever cleaned or washed, like, this is the most beautiful. And she also, I forgot to mention, remarks how beautiful Hideko is, which she is. They're both very beautiful. And she's so like flummoxed. She even says to herself, like, why didn't he say she was so beautiful? Like, God, now I'm so nervous. So Count Fujiwara stands up so fast, he knocks over a chair, and then he says that she's spellbindingly beautiful. He's obviously putting it on. We get a flashback of him telling Suki that if you say something like that to women, they'll just fall for you. This guy's kind of a dickhead. Not kind of. So then, they leave the dinner and they basically play dress up because Hideko wants to, show her some of these really pretty things. It's a really sweet scene. Like she's tightening up her what is it? Like her
corset?
Yeah, her corset, because Suki mentions like, oh, this is so tight. And she's like, oh, you think that's tight? Then there's like a beautiful scene where they're both undressing each other. And there's all these beautiful, intricate buttons on Hideko's dress. And Suki even thinks like these dresses are only made for people who are going to be dressing and undressing. She's like, it feels like she's like a doll. And these buttons are all just for my amusement. It's just such a, like, who thinks of that? Like, so good. So They have fun. So then on a walk, more seduction begins to happen, where Suki's just basically witness to Count Fujiwara putting the moves on Hideko, and she's growing increasingly frustrated experiencing it. On a walk, Hideko reveals to Suki that her mother died in childbirth, and she wishes that she were never born. This is such a sweet scene. Suki grabs Hideko's face. She has to. She can't help it. And she says that no child is ever guilty of being born, and that she shouldn't feel guilty, and that if her mother had been able to tell her, she would have said that she was so happy that she had her before she died. And it's just a really beautiful thing. We come to find out that the woman that Suki was living with, because Suki's mom was hanged for stealing, I think she was killed for stealing. And, she was asking her auntie about her mom. And this is what the auntie tells her, and she's like, your mom always said that she was just happy that she had you before she died. And it's just a really beautiful sentiment. So Suki then sees the Count and Hideko kiss, and Hideko reveals that the Count has proposed to her. There is a scene where Suki and Hideko basically have sex because Hideko is saying I don't even know, what am I going to do in bed? Again, extremely erotic. It would be awkward to go into all of it because I'm talking to my mom right now, but I guess I'll just say this is one of the hottest, most well done sex scenes in my opinion that I've ever seen. And a really great trivia point that I wrote down because it made me so happy. IMDb says that for the lesbian love scenes, the director took steps to ensure privacy and comfort for the actresses. Only a female crew member holding the boom mic was present, and all other crew members were asked to leave the set. The scenes were filmed with a remote-controlled camera, no visitors were allowed, all male crew members had a day off, and there was a bathroom in Hideko's room that was used as a resting area for the actresses to relax between takes. The bed scenes were shot during the very early stages because Park was like, this is too stressful and burdensome. I just want to get this over with. And during pre-production, the scenes were choreographed and discussed between Park and both actresses while they were fully dressed. And apparently Kim Tae-ri, who plays Suki, said that she felt really insecure about performing the simulated lesbian love scenes, but Kim Min-hee, Hideko, reassured and energized her. And something else that's really sweet is that Kim Tae-ri was apparently a fan of Kim Min-hee's work before they ever met. She did not know that Min-hee would be playing Hideko, and it was only in meeting with Park after being chosen as Suki that Park asked her who her favorite actor was. Tae-ri mentioned Min-hee, and Park was delighted. That is so sweet. It's just wholesome. And I mean, again, just the sex scene, it's really beautiful, especially when we get juxtaposition between other sex scenes later. And, she's looking at Hideko's vulva, and she's like, it's spellbindingly beautiful. She repeats the line from before. So Suki defies the Count at one point because he wants her to leave so he can be alone with Hideko. And she's like, my job is to be here with the lady, so I will not leave. He freaks out. He grabs her hand, puts it on his crotch to demonstrate how much he wants this, and threatens to tell the lady that she's just a lowly pickpocket. And she agrees to go with the plan, but tells him to never put her hand on his tiny joke of a cock, which is a great line. So Hideko asks Suki what would she do if she thinks she loves someone other than the Count. Suki tells her, no, you love the Count, because she's really just now trying to be focused on getting money back to her family at home. She's like, this person doesn't care about me. And Hideko slaps her and feels betrayed. So then the uncle leaves for a week. He tells Hideko, do not forget the basement. He says, you have 1 week of freedom, but do not forget the basement. Hideko is very scared, obviously. But the Count and Hideko elope, but she brings Suki. She says, we cannot do this unless I bring Suki. It's a bit, it's a whirlwind of things happening. And then we get the first big plot twist as when they're bringing Hideko to the mental institution where they're going to give her away, they actually take Suki. And they're like, yeah, she still thinks that she's the handmaiden when she's actually the countess. And Suki's like, you scoundrel, like yelling. And, it's very dramatic. And then we get part 2. Suki says, okay, you might have thought that Hideko was this really innocent girl, right? She's a rotten bitch. And at this point, I was afraid. I was like, I really want a good happy ending, a good gay happy ending. Well, don't worry. So we get a flashback to Hideko's childhood. Like I said, her mom's dead. She lives with this horrible man, her uncle, and she's beaten by him, beaten on the hand with these metal balls. And she is learning from her aunt to read the erotic fiction out loud. She has to learn how to speak Japanese. She has to enunciate it in the perfect way. There's all these scenes, like there's one scene where the aunt and her are kind of giggling over because they're learning like the word for like penis and vagina. And the uncle just goes over with his gloved hands and grabs both their faces and just like, it's so weird and moves them around. And it just is violating, like he violates them. But I think this movie does a good job of doing that without really crossing some like lines that I think would be really triggering for people. Like you get that idea just from him grabbing their faces of just like, this is intrusive and horrible. So also, he just completely is an asshole to Hideko, and her life is basically like living hell. So the aunt is then seen hanging from a tree, and Hideko, there's a great scene where Hideko's like, everyone told him to cut it down, but he said no because it made the blooms bigger. And she, as she grows up, like finds herself hanging, like kind of hanging with her arms from the tree, just obviously thinking like, man, my life sucks. She then is telling, still as a kid, tells the uncle one day, like, I read that when people get hanged, their tongue falls out and they poop themselves, but that's not what the aunt looked like. And uncle says, oh, let me show you something. He takes her down to this basement and he says, let me give you an idea of what I did to her when I caught her trying to run away, so that you never try to run away. And anytime you ever think of trying to run away, remember this, like remember the basement. I mean, so he's a horrible guy. And this is, I don't know, where we start to get to this, just the part of the movie that I just also think is really good intellectually, because we see the scenes of Hideko actually doing these like erotic readings. And she's on this beautiful, tiny little stage in a beautiful outfit, beautiful hair and makeup. And she's reading. And I mean, like for the audience, she's doing a great job. Like it's whatever vibe this horrible uncle is setting up, he succeeds. And I think that this movie brings up like a really important question of, or not even question, but statement of like, art can be really, really beautiful and really, really good, but a lot of art can come at the cost of somebody's whole humanity, and it's not worth it, like, even though in order to get this, you kind of have to do these, like, to get someone who's perfect at reading this, apparently, maybe you do have to torture a kid and teach them to do it till they're young. Does that make it worth it? No, totally not, as is evidenced by the turmoil that both Hideko and her aunt felt. And it just reminded me of The Shining, when Shelley Duvall gives like an amazing performance, but then you learn that, she's basically tortured on set. And it's like, yeah, probably she wouldn't have given that performance if she wasn't tortured on set. Does that make it okay? No. And I just think this movie does a good job of just like putting that out there, of just like, hey, yes, maybe, or, when you think about kids who like have to practice to be an Olympian from the time that they're young and they lose their whole childhoods. It's like, maybe that is what you have to do to become an Olympian. Is that worth it? And I don't think it's worth it, especially not to inflict onto somebody else. And it just completely reduces what he's doing. The uncle is reducing women down to just their eroticism and how they can make men feel erotic, and doesn't take, into account their feelings at all. And, he's such a pervert with the way that I'm saying pervert, but I really mean he's a fucking pervert. And his whole life is just dedicated to fetishizing women. And I really like that this is discussed. So
I like the scene because all the men are like in tuxedos and they're all watching her, and then they place themselves into, you see it from their point of view. They're fantasizing as if they were in the story with her. Like what you were saying about, the uncle has basically created her to do this performance. And I think what's kind of cool about this movie is it is so much about performance because you have like double cross. We have one double cross so far. And so everyone's sort of putting on an act and like pretending to be somebody that they're not. And she is, speaking in Japanese, and she's got her hair in this sort of traditional Japanese style. And then you're right. She's just reduced to her parts, I guess. And I don't know if we want to flash forward, but just there's a mention that the Count makes later where he says, despite what you've heard, women actually love it when they're taken by force. And I thought that was interesting too, because he might actually believe that.
Yeah. Yeah. Based off of these, yes, I thought about that a lot too, because I'm not trying to make a statement on porn as a whole, because I definitely am not, I don't know the whole history of everything. And then, I don't know how every culture does it, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that there's obviously something very problematic if you have explanations or depictions of sex that are only told by one viewpoint, only to satisfy one person. And if somebody's using that for their whole knowledge base, then yeah, they might think that that is what it is, when it's completely not. And so, yeah, again, I'm not saying porn is evil, nothing like that. But I do think that is why it is an issue of if there's kids being really exposed to something that's that they can't fully understand of well, no, this is okay if it's, if y'all had this talk beforehand or, something like that where,
right.
But, it's this isn't what all sex looks like.
This is not to insert myself, but I will. This is something that I was really afraid of with you and your brother, because having access to the internet as a child or teenager, means that you can see anything and everything. And if you're just basing your quote knowledge of sex off of pornographic clips or movies or whatever, you're getting a picture, but you're not getting a full picture of what sexuality is about. And I was really worried about that would happen to you guys, and that's what you would think that sex was all about.
And I will say, I think it is something that a lot of people have to unlearn with porn being so accessible, like you said. Because I know there's people who do the parental lock on things, but your kid's gonna find a way. I'm just telling you that right now. And also it's everywhere. You don't even have to look at porn. You just have to look at any, even PG-13 movie. And again, I'm not trying to be the morality police. My issue is with depicting things that are very male gazy, only benefiting to the sexual needs of cis het men, and things that could produce problematic situations for real humans. It's that's what freaks me out. It's not sex as a whole. Cause like I said, the sex scenes between Suki and Hideko, beautiful and hot. It's both. It's not just oh wow, it's so beautiful and it's no, it's beautiful and it's wow, damn, this is hot, and I love that.
And also I just feel I don't know, I saw a little documentary or something on Sweden or Denmark or one of those places, and they talk to kids about sex, but they also talk to kids about what it means to be in a sexual relationship and what it feels like when you get dumped. and things like that. So we don't do that in this culture. And so, that in the absence of that, what are you supposed to do? Like, you're right. Kids are curious. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just that what they find, is just one depiction of sex. And it does come from this point of view of women are there to please men. In general, I know there's lots of different kinds of stuff out there, but that's the
front page of Pornhub. That's what you're going to find.
Majority. Right. Exactly. And so that's what women are for. And it's just, if that's all you're seeing, then you are going to have a very skewed view of what it means to be in a sexual relationship with somebody.
And yeah. And so like in the way that relates to this, so many of these men are only ingesting content written by other men, even though these stories have women having sex either with each other or with men, it's like, oh, but they're all written by men. So it's, if a guy tells you, well, yeah, women they're actually totally cool with being forced. They actually like it. It's like, buddy, are you a woman? Like, and so yeah, there's just a great juxtaposition between Suki and Hideko having sex where it's very like, they're communicative, and they obviously are both into it. There's no question. They are both into it, and I love what this movie has to say about the male gaze and how that affects real people. So the Count actually meets Hideko at one of these readings, and he says that he's been hearing about her for years, preparing for 3 because he wanted to swindle her out of her money. He tells her this because he says, "My plan was to seduce you, but when I caught your gaze, you did not look away. I had to look away first." And he basically says, your body, well, he says this to the uncle, but he says, her body's as cold as a waterfowl. And he was like, there's no, sexual desire that she feels for me. And so he just says like, I knew I couldn't seduce you. So how about this? What if we go halvesies in on it? We'll trick somebody. They'll go to the mental institution. You'll marry me, but I'll take half the money. You take the other half. And she says, I can't do it. I'd rather kill myself basically, because if I end up in that basement. So he says to her, here's your wedding present. He's going to give her a vial of opium, 3 drops, sleep all day, swallow all of it, you die. So he says, you never have to worry about getting trapped in the basement, which is so fucking morbid. But she's like, hell yeah. Like, these are only options. So then we get a retelling of the story, but this time from Hideko's eyes with this new knowledge. And she genuinely falls in love with Suki. Like all those times where you were seeing her fall in love with her, that was real. Like she at no point was faking that. So Hideko, so then, when we get to the scene where Hideko tells Suki to get out when Suki pressures her to marry the Count, she actually went to go try to hang herself. And there's actually, when I noticed this watching it again, there is kind of a hint to this because before part 2 and just in part 1, when they're leaving, there is a noose hanging from the cherry tree. So you would kind of be like, why is that happening? I didn't even notice that first time. So Hideko tries to hang herself. Suki catches her before she can, and she's like, I'm sorry. And Hideko says, what are you sorry for? She said, I was going to have you institutionalized. And Hideko's like, listen, I can't even say sorry because like I was trying to do the same thing to you. And it's just such a fucking girl boss moment. I'm not going to lie, of just these 2 women being like, wait a second. Like, we love each other. What the fuck is this guy doing? Because also we've seen so many scenes of the Count just being a dickhead to Hideko. Like he tells her at one point, he's like, no part about you except for your money is attractive to me. Is all he thinks about. And so Suki professes her love. They reveal their plots to each other. And Hideko helps Suki write a letter to her family outlining what the Count had done. Because, he tried to swindle her. And her family back home is her family. And so she's like, help me. I'm going to work with Hideko. So now we see. Oh, and gosh, just like, this is my favorite scene. Before they leave, Hideko is like, I want to show you something. And she takes her, because the uncle's gone, takes her to the uncle's library. And she shows her one of the book. And Suki's like, so this is, and she's like, and you see, it's also just like a famous print. It was in Mad Men, and I know a lot of people have seen it. She flips to this page where it's a woman and an octopus like an octopus is having sex with a woman, and she's disgusted. And she's like, is this what your uncle made you read out to those men? And Hideko's like, yes. And Suki just starts destroying everything. She's ripping pages out. She's taking a knife, opening up books and stabbing them. She's taking ink and spilling them all over. Hideko begins to join her, and they're just they're literally destroying the male gaze. And it's just like, I cry every time. I cried both times when I watched it because it legitimately is very powerful. Like, I think it's a really amazing scene. It should be in the MoMA. And like, I don't know, it's so powerful having these two women who, especially Hideko, you know, her whole life has been ruled by these books. You know, her life is not her own. It's only in service to men. And they just get to destroy it all. You know, it's like, and I just feel like it's such a thing that a lot of people do where they're like, oh, we need to preserve this thing. You know, it's like, it's disgusting, but we need to, and you know, they're like, fuck that. Like like I'm a direct victim of like this. So I'm destroying it. And I just think that's amazing. So,
and I really love like Hideko, like watching Suki, like she's just like falling deeper in love with her because
yes,
this is such a gift to her. And Suki's passion to destroy these books is so, you know, you can just see it radiating off her. And Hideko is just like, no one's ever been like this kind to her ever. And it's like the best gift she ever could have received, you know? So
that's such a good way to put it. Like, yeah, it is special. And because, yeah, Suki is doing it for her. And I don't like, there's so many movies where, you know, like a guy's wife dies and he goes to go kill somebody to get revenge and stuff. But this is like revenge that is good. Like, this is stuff that really felt both in service of Hideko, you know, where she's like, fuck, this shit fucking sucks. I'm getting rid of all of it, you know? And, you know, we're going to leave. And he's not even going to have these fucking books to keep him company. Like, fuck this guy. And I just, it's so good. So basically we get, you know, towards the end now where we're just finding out how it all wraps up. Suki's in the asylum. Her friend Boksoon sets fire and poses as a firefighter. They dress her up as a firefighter, get her out of there. Hideko is trying to dose Fujiwara. She doses Fujiwara's wine with some opium drops, but she cannot get him to drink it. So she's like, hey, like, she basically repeats one of the lines before she says, if you could have 10 minutes with me, like, what would you give me in return? And he's like, oh, I mean, my entire life. So then he starts like really aggressively, like, you know, fondling her, kissing her. And then that's where we get the line where he's like, hey, and she's like, she takes, because he won't drink the wine. So she drinks it, but then puts it in his mouth through kissing, trying to be like erotic with it. And so then she's just waiting, like she's checking her watch, like, come on, fall asleep. Because he's just getting so aggressive. And that's when he says the line like, you know what, hey, actually, contrary to popular belief, women like this, when she's clearly not liking it. And so then he passes out. So the women meet up, they flee. Hideko poses as a man, and amazing drag. They're on a boat together and they get to live happily ever after, and it's beautiful. Story's not over there. The uncle captures Fujiwara and tortures him because Hideko writes the uncle like a note basically saying like, hey, fuck you. Here's a gift. You know, it was always kind of pathetic seeing you like tremble before this guy who you thought was a Japanese noble. He's a Korean farmhand's son. And here you go. And she's like, she says something like, I can only be very slightly grateful that all this happened because out of all the girls that he sent me Suki, and now I have my Suki, you know? She's like, that's it. You're not getting anything else from me. And so Fujiwara is now in the possession of the uncle, and the uncle presses him for the sexual details about his niece, who he's seen raise horrible. So he also tortures him. He uses his book binding to cut off his fingers one by one. He says he's like, this is for this book and this is for this book. And Fujiwara is he's kind of taking it like a champ, to be honest. Fujiwara makes up a story about the wedding night, and he, in the meantime, is asking if he can smoke a cigarette. On the drive here, he opened up his little tin and he had 5 cigarettes, 3 white, 2 blue. And he takes the 3 white ones and smokes them all, which at first...
At the same time.
Yeah, at the same time. At first, it just seems like he's kind of like, fuck it, I'm about to die. But we then know that he's doing this because he asks to get a cigarette. He, of course, wants the Count to pick one of the blue ones because they are laced with mercury. And in its gaseous state, it will cause them both to die because they're in a room with no windows or anything. According to IMDb, this is not how this works, but who cares? Yeah, so Fujiwara, he makes up a story about the wedding night because there's a scene where it's implied that him and Hideko have sex. They didn't. He watched her masturbate and she cut her hand to make it seem like she had lost her virginity, even though obviously at this point Suki was in on it all, but like this was to fool him. And Kozuki wants more details. This is when he's being a fucking creep. He's like, did she quiver? Was she tight? Like, ugh. So Fujiwara then kind of reveals like, hey bitch, I just smoked some mercury. We're gonna both die. And there's a great last scene where the 2 women are on the ferry together, and with the same metal balls that the uncle used to beat Hideko with, they insert them into each other, and it makes this really like beautiful ringing noise and stuff. I mean, it's kind of like not silly, but I mean, it's kind of a callback to like, it was in one of the stories, but here these women are like reclaiming it for their own. And then the movie ends, and then I cry, and it's so good, and I love it so much. 5 out of 5.
So we should take a break. But before that, I wanted to say that I was listening to this, I don't know if it was YouTube or podcast or something. And this woman was saying that, nice try, Park Chan-wook, but this is porn. The last scene is porn. I disagree. I think it, because to me, in porn, you don't necessarily know the people's names or like their motivations or anything. And in this scene, they're laughing,
it's joyous.
Smiling. It is joyous. They have escaped and they are together and they are sailing to China and they're going to have this new adventure together. And yeah, it's the balls, but right. It's the balls from the story from before. Yeah. And like you said, that's very intentional because they are now taking ownership of those and, deriving pleasure from them, but they're giving pleasure to each other. Yeah. Not for the satisfaction of some man. Yeah. And this person was just saying, yeah, but we, the viewer, are turned into the man. And I'm like, no, I disagree. I don't think so.
Yeah. It's like, I was going to say, like, I mean, obviously Park Chan-wook is not a lesbian. He's a man. And obviously, if you have something written from the viewpoint, like if it's a lesbian creating something, it's like, that's like real, like there's a huge difference than that. And I'm not going to say this is like, number one piece of LGBT media that's ever existed. I see it even less as that and more of just a story. I see it more of like, obviously it's a big part that these women fall in love, but it's not really even like them being like in love with each other. Like there's no, and I hope this comes across as the right way, but there's no like coming out or anything, it's not based off of the labels that we have today. And I'm not even saying labels that we have today are bad or anything, but I think, I don't know, in this movie, I just really like that it's like, yeah, they both fall in love with each other and that's it. It's a love story. It's not like, I've never felt this way about a woman before. Oh, dearest me. It's like, they're both like, oh, you're beautiful. You're beautiful. I think this woman's so beautiful. I don't know. Like, does this make sense? Like, it just feels less of like it is gay, but it's not gay just for the sake of being like, we're gay. Does this make sense?
I don't know what I'm saying. No, I don't know because I'm also not a lesbian. I do know that the author of the novel is lesbian, and Park Chan-wook's consultant.
I had that written down. Lesbian. Yes,
and to me, they seem like lesbians. Well, and if I were a lesbian, I might like dig watching 2 ladies get it on. But I mean, I dig it anyway. Yeah. I don't know.
I guess what I mean is like, I feel like there's a certain formula for the way gay media is presented today, like gay stories, which are centered all around coming out and, you know, what will my parents think and stuff. And I'm not saying that those are unimportant stories to tell. They completely are. But I enjoyed the fact that this was a love story between two women where it didn't follow that same formula. Like it didn't have to follow that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and they also play the game, quote unquote, like just with the mustache and like the drag that Hideko is wearing, because they go through the depot, right?
Yeah.
They go through and they're looking for two women traveling together.
Yeah.
So Suki and Hideko have like thought of that contingency, and so they are posing as this like heterosexual couple.
Yeah.
To be able to be themselves.
This is true.
You know, that night, you know, in their bedroom.
Yeah.
And I love that because to me it seems like this is a story of women who outsmarted the system together. And also, you know, we're able to express the love that they feel for each other.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah, I had written down that during the script writing stage, Director Park and his female co-writer, who is Seo Kyung-jong, often sought the advice of one of Chung's best friends, who is a queer woman, for the advice on the sensibilities of queer women. And I mean, I don't know. It's like, I do admire that too, because it's like these again, I'm not a lesbian. I have certainly at one point been female identified and have dated a woman, but I really don't think that the relationship that these two is for the sexual gratification of the viewer. Like you believe them as lovers, like you completely, like the scenes with them are it's not even just like, yeah, they're sexy, but like, it's also heartwarming and beautiful, like genuinely sweet
and funny
and like
that
hilarious.
first scene where she's like, will the count like this when I do this? And
it's silly.
And the Suki's like, how could
she's
this like protected woman like know this stuff?
Yeah.
So it's just sort of funny in places too.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess I respect somebody else's opinion. Like I read some people, because I needed to look at a lot of opinions after watching this. You know, I can respect that some people find that those scenes themselves were a bit male gazy, but I think in a way, I feel like if you don't know the story, I feel like you will be surprised by it. And in a way, sometimes I do think you have to show the thing to talk about why the thing is bad, you know, with male gaze and stuff like that. But I also don't think I don't know how you could show a sex scene without it being kind of sexy, you know? Anyways, that's my opinion.
Yeah.
Like to me, this isn't like a slave Leia situation. I give it 5 out of 5 thimbles.
I heard that scene is in the novel, and Park Chan-wook was like, I wonder what that would be like filmed.
He did a great job, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, his brain's amazing. Oh, one trivia I did not realize. Tae-ri Kim, who plays Suki, this was her very first role, her feature film debut. She was selected for the role out of 1,500 applicants, and Park Chan-wook casted her at the audition within 10 to 15 minutes.
I mean, her face,
amazing.
Her fucking face. She is so expressive, and she looks like a child in the beginning of the film, but especially her scenes with Ha Jung-woo, where they're both pretending in public, but then they like face each other and they're like, fuck you.
Yeah.
You know, and so you get this feeling that she's very savvy, even though she's got this like sweet face.
Yeah.
But yeah, what a find. She's amazing.
Good job.
Good job. Well, why don't we take a break and then we can come back and talk about Mother.
Sounds good.
the other movie that you chose, Mac, is Mother, which is the Korean name is Made, and it is a 2009 South Korean thriller film directed by Bong Joon-ho, starring Kim Hye-ja and Won Bin. The plot follows a mother who, after her intellectually disabled son is accused of the murder of a young girl, attempts to find the true killer in order to get her son freed. I have a lot to say about this.
Please.
If you haven't seen the movie, do yourself a favor and watch this movie, because I was trying to think if I liked it better than Parasite or Memories of Murder. I think Memories of Murder is my favorite, to be honest. I still have
to watch that one.
I think it's on Hulu too.
It is. Yeah.
You can see a lot of similarities between that movie and this one, because the police are involved in both, but and they're both murder investigations. But
I feel like
that one is, well, it's dealing with a really serious subject matter, but the cops are so awful that, it can't help but be funny. And the subversion of, one thing I like about Korean cinema is these revered characters are played with a lot. Memories of Murder, the portrayal of the police is something. They are cruel, stupid, but they are bad cops,
I think Korean cinema, this is something that I love so much about it, is that it's like you see the characters' bad parts and their good parts, but they're still enjoying to watch. It's like there's no hero in the sense of like American heroes, where it's like this person doesn't exist, they're without flaw, and everything they do in the context of the story is presented to us as the best decision to make. And I just feel like I love movies so much more where it's like bad decisions are made, like human decisions are made. There are decisions where you're like, why are you doing that? Or like people do cruel things, selfish things, but like they're still like, in The Handmaiden, it's like Count Fujiwara is like a shithead, but like, do I love watching it? I love it. And even the uncle, I would say, like, I don't love him, but like, I like a more honest portrayal, because I like people for their bad parts and their good parts, as I feel like most people do.
Yeah. So, I don't know, just a general pitch for Bong Joon-ho movies. I haven't seen all of them, but the ones I have seen are really great. This one came out in 2009. It has a runtime of 128 minutes. So, as I said, the story's called Mother. It is about this mother. And I'll just talk about the opening scene. It's very famous. And we see her walk toward the camera through a field. And then she just starts to do this dance. And it's very strange. And she's, kind of swaying back and forth. And then she's moving her arms a little bit. And then she's covering her eyes at one point. And then at another point, she's covering her mouth. And sometimes she looks like she has a smile on her face. And what I love about it is just, you're immediately like off center. Like, what is this old lady doing? Why is she dancing? Why is she dancing in a field? And then we just sort of cut to the life of this mother and son. So this older son, he's like 27, and he's living with her. And she's, what do you think? She's in her late 60s?
Yeah, she seems kind of old.
Yeah. She's getting by selling herbs and doing acupuncture illegally. Anyway, he's across the road. He's playing with a dog, and he like picks up the dog's paw, and he's like, "Say hi to mom." Anyway, he gets hit by a car, and she runs immediately like a bullet, like across the street to her son. And even just that is a wonderful picture of who she is. She's got her eyes trained on him the whole time. And then when he does encounter, misfortune, she is there in a flash. And he's even like, Mom, get off me. This is embarrassing. She's just fixated on him.
She doesn't even smile when he like waves the dog's paw. I noticed that. Like she keeps staring so intensely. Like she doesn't even allow herself a brief moment of even just enjoying the moment. It's just like, I gotta keep my eye on you.
Yeah. I'll just go through like the major plot points, But like I said, they're not as important as the revelation of who this woman is. But basically, after Do-jun is hit by the car, his friend and he sort of seek to enact revenge on the owner of that BMW. And Jin-tae, the friend, breaks a side mirror off the BMW, and Do-jun tries to imitate him, but he falls, and he doesn't do any damage at all. But Jin-tae blames him for that, and that's a lot of money to replace this mirror, and so the mother has like this incredible debt all of a sudden. But the main part of this movie involves Do-jun after he gets out of that scrap. His immediate thought is to join his friend Jin-tae, who I guess is busy because Do-jun ends up at a bar. He gets wasted. And as he's walking home, he encounters a girl. And we see two versions of the event that occurs. This first version is that, he talks to her. She doesn't respond. Here's this drunk guy, and she's a school girl, and he's harassing her. To him, he's just being friendly, but to her, it seems like harassment, and she throws a rock at him. And in this version, he just looks at the rock and just sort of walks away, and that's the end of the story. Then he gets back home, climbs in bed with his mom, in a very, I would say, inappropriate embrace. Their legs are sort of entwined. They're facing each other. Makes me very uncomfortable. Girl's dead. Next morning, her body is discovered. Her body has been sort of bent over this wall. And
because you don't see her face, right?
You only see her face when the detective sort of looks through her legs to see her face. And I'm not exactly sure why he's doing that. Maybe just to see that there isn't any blood on her face, or I don't really know why he does that. But anyway, the cops take Do-jun in because one of his golf balls that he had gotten at the golf course has his name written on it, and that was found near the body.
You couldn't get more open and shut, which is how they treat it. They're just like, we kind of got him.
Well, that is one thing, because one thing I think Bong Joon-ho is really interested in is, talking about social issues. And I think this is one of them, that someone who is intellectually disabled really doesn't have any defense against cops like these, because he can't defend himself. He goes along with whatever he's told, and it's easier for the cops.
Yeah,
if they can just close the case, then they can move on to something else. But yeah, it's completely circumstantial. It doesn't
say anything.
Yeah. And then they do this weird thing where they take him into this basement and they make him take off his pants. So he's just in his shorts, and then they stick an apple in his mouth and slap the apple so that half of it breaks off. What kind of technique is this? It's very strange.
Yeah.
And anyway, he ends up in jail, and mother comes and says, "What happened? Why?" First she's like, "Why did you do it?" Then she said, "Even if you did it, you should say you didn't do it." And he's like, "What? No, if I did it, I should say I did it."
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a little bit of sketchy morality going on with the mom. Oh, yeah. Then we see her. She goes to the memorial of the girl.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody in town assumes that Do-jun is the murderer. And they're like, "What is this bitch doing at the memorial service?" Yeah. And they confront her, and she goes, "I just wanted to pay respects. That's why I'm here."
Yeah.
And she goes, "Actually, my son didn't do it." And they're like,
"Here?
Bitch.
Here of all places?"
And
doesn't it remind you of Beast?
Yes.
I guess Beast reminds me of this.
this is completely inappropriate.
Do not do this.
I don't even know Korean culture to know how inappropriate this is. But one of the family members actually slaps her in the face, which also is like, you don't slap an old woman in the face, but all the sound drops out in the film at that moment. And it's a really good moment. Do-jun is in jail. He does this thing where he presses the side of his forehead. It's a sort of acupressure, and it's meant to help him remember things. And he does. He remembers that he didn't break the mirror. And this is a bit of humor because the mom's visiting, and he goes, I remembered. And she said, you remembered that you didn't kill the girl? And he goes, no, I remembered I didn't break the window. Mom just figures she's got to take things into her own hands. She does hire a lawyer, but it's very clear that he is not invested in this case. And so she really feels like she's got to take matters into her own hands. And so she sets her sights on Jin-tae, the friend, and she goes to his house. She hides in the closet, which is a great scene. He has sex with his girlfriend. And then when they're asleep, she sneaks out. And there's a moment, it's kind of a Bong Joon-ho kind of moment where she accidentally knocks over a bottle of water. And there's this like water that's like creeping toward Jin-tae's fingers. And she's just standing there kind of like,
what do I do?
Frozen. And it's kind of like, it reminds me of like Snowpiercer. You know, there's that one scene with the fish and you're kind of like, what? You know, but these people, it's so slow.
Yeah.
And everybody sort of freezes and then the action continues. But there's one weird part I wanted to ask you about. When the kids are having sex with each other, they're saying English words.
Yeah.
Back and forth to each other. Like, I wrote them down.
Maybe.
There's spaghetti, tiramisu, something, my printer didn't cooperate with this part. Something mineral, and then alarm armadillo.
I do not know. I do not know what that is about, or what that is conveying. Besides, these people are dumb. Like, I don't know.
I think, maybe it's just a picture of these two, their sex life, and this is just something that is fun. I don't know, but it's so funny and weird and idiosyncratic, and so I wrote it down. When the mom was at the Jin-tae's house, she took a golf club that he had stolen, and it has a little bit of what looks like to her blood on the golf club. So she takes it to the police precinct. It's not blood.
And these cops are just like, oh my God, she's back.
It's lipstick. And Jin-tae has like conclusive proof on his video on his phone showing his girlfriend like kissing the golf club. So anyway, the lawyer says, 4 years.
Yeah.
Isn't so bad. Let's just put him in a hospital for 4 years. It won't be so bad. And she has a flashback. It's just so brief. You probably won't notice it on your first viewing, but the little boy, Do-jun as a little boy is holding like a tiny bottle, and that'll be relevant later, but it's just one little flash of that. She gets caught in a rainstorm. She takes an umbrella off the back of the junk man's cart, and she's just kind of out of it. She's upset. She doesn't know what to do. She offers him 2 bills, and he only takes 1, which I really like. Because to me, that shows that he's kind of an upright guy.
Yeah.
He might be poor, but he's got, ethics.
Yeah.
When she comes home, Jin-tae is there. For a second, she thinks it's Do-jun. But no, it's Jin-tae. And he wants $5,000 from her. But he also says that there were rumors about Moon Ah-jung, the girl who was killed. And what I like about this part of the movie is I think inside everybody they want to be a detective in some way. And Jin-tae and the mother just sort of spring into action, and
it's a delight.
It is really a delight. But Jin-tae tells her, don't trust anyone. Don't even trust me.
So, like, I love Jin-tae because, like, you're like with him, everything he's saying, and then, but when you actually listen, you're like, what are you saying? Like, you sound kind of stupid, but like, but he says it with such a confidence.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just like a young man who, I don't know, deep down he's good. I mean, she's like, oh my God, I didn't even know you were a good person.
Even though he's extorting her for money.
Well, yeah, but he believes that Do-jun has been done dirty and he wants to, right that wrong. And she's like, wow, like, I didn't even know that was on your mind. So then the mom goes around questioning people in the neighborhood. And I love the part where she's like talking to the little kids. She's just like listening to them very intently and like offering a coin to like one of the boys to like hear more about the story.
The actress really, I mean, like, I know it's been said a million times, but I mean, like this movie sometimes is just kind of like watching her and eating it up, and I'm okay with it. Like, I just like love anything she does. I'm like, you're doing it great. Like, she's just amazing to watch.
Yeah, she really, really is. Do-jun has this thing where he's pretty easygoing unless you call him, I guess I won't say the word.
The R word?
The R word. If you call him the R word, he flips out. And that happens in jail. One prisoner puts another one up to calling him that, and then they get into a fight. And so when we see Do-jun, he's got this terrible, like, black eye. But
the way these guys put him up to it too, they're just like, call him that, see what happens, and they totally know
it'll be hilarious.
Yeah, and it's like the guy's like, whoa.
So this is a pretty cool shot. Mom goes to see him. He's got his hand over his eye, and he says, "Oh, I remembered something." And she's like, "Oh, great. What do you remember?" He goes, "I remember when you tried to kill me when I was 5 years old." And she screams and she backs up and she's just like, she can't deal with this because she did. She did try to kill him. Now, what he remembers is that she tried to kill him, but he doesn't remember that she was also going to kill herself. And she had to, take care of him first before she killed herself. Because she was sad and they didn't have any money, or I don't know. But so, but he doesn't remember that part. He just remembers, which is fair enough. But she gets hung up on it. Like, she's like, how could a 5-year-old like even remember that? So there's another thing about this movie is like the theme of memory, and can we trust our memories? And, can we somehow get rid of bad memories? She goes to a photography studio, and the woman in the photography studio remembers Ah-jung. We also, as an audience, realized that Ah-jung got nosebleeds. One thing I liked about this, it's not really part of the story, is that there's a character, one of the girls has a pretty severe scar on her cheek, and her photograph has been retouched. And so she's like, I wish there was something like this for my face. And I thought, well, there is. And she'll probably pursue that, in a couple of years. Anyway, that girl knows how to tweak cell phones. She knows how to make it so that when you take a picture on a cell phone, there's no sound. So that you can just take like pictures all day long and no one will know that you're doing that. And so we get this picture that Ah-jung was sleeping with men, lots and lots of men, but she had all this like proof on her phone and she was doing it for money, right? Is that?
I think so. Yeah. It's kind of a common plot line, like, schoolgirl trying to make money. Yeah.
She doesn't have parents. She lives with her alcoholic grandmother. Oh, one thing. Oh, darn it. This is way past the point. But at the memorial scene, I really loved this one little detail where the grandmother is looking at the portrait of her granddaughter, but then you realize she's looking like to see if her hair looks good. She's not actually looking at her granddaughter.
Bong Joon-ho is just so good at these things.
Good. Mother is going to try to get with the girl who can tweak the cell phones and see if there's some proof that'll exonerate Do-jun. But the girl gets intimidated by these boys who come up, and she runs away. Now, this is a really fun part for me. So they're kind of bullying her, harassing her in the back of this alley, and Mother doesn't know what to do. She's sort of watching this, but she's not sure how to intervene. So what she does is she breaks a glass bottle, and this man comes out and he chases the boys away. And do you know who that man is?
Who?
That man is Kwak Do-won from The Wailing.
Love him.
Yeah. So I don't know, 7 years earlier, he's in this movie. Anyway, Mother finally gets Ah-jung's cell and takes it to Do-jun. And he says that there was an old man. And she flips through the photos and she finds the junk man. Okay, so she sets her sights on him and she's going to go question him. I like this scene too.
Mm-hmm.
So she's posing as kind of like a care worker who's just checking on the elderly to make sure they're doing okay. He was there that night when Do-jun was following the girl. And he saw what happened. And what happened was there was a confrontation between the girl and the boy. The girl called him the R word. And he threw a rock at her and hit her in the head and caused her death. We also see that I don't know why, I just got goosebumps. This creeps me out so bad. He pulled her up by one leg up these metal steps. Oh man, it's rough. And the way that's shot is it's in profile through a window that's covered with plastic. It's just...
It's gruesome.
It's hard. It's so hard. It's holy shit.
It's an oh shit moment.
So then she's like, oh fuck. But she starts screaming again like she did before. And she's like, no, he's just about to be released. This can't be true. And he's like, you know what? I think I should tell the police
that
I was there. And so she kills him with a wrench, and she gets blood all over herself.
Yes.
And then she tries to clean up the blood. It's just sort of this, I have never killed anybody, but I imagine you sort of go out of your mind for a second.
Got it.
Or somebody, some people might. So she's trying to clean up this blood, but obviously, the damage is done. There's no getting around this. So what she does is she sets fire to the junk man's house and burns the whole building down. Now, the police have told her that they actually found the real killer. His name is Jung Paul. He had Ah Jung's blood on his shirt. So they're like, okay, he must be the killer.
Yeah.
So she wants to go and see him.
Mm-hmm.
So when they bring him in to be, to the visiting area or whatever, she realizes that he has Down syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And he's much more intellectually disabled than her own son.
Yeah.
And she says, well, don't you have a mother?
Sorry, motorcyclist.
And he says no. And she just, her face starts to break because she's just
nobody's going to help him the way I'm helping my son.
Yeah, he's got no one. Literally no one. Well, Do-jun is freed. Jin-tae picks him up, and they drive by the junk man's burned up house. And Do-jun tells Mom maybe that Jung Pal, so he's going along with the story too, maybe Jung Pal put her up there so she would be seen and someone would help her.
that part hit me so hard when he said that. Like, I don't know, like that idea, because it's so gruesome when she's up there, and obviously how he picks, but also just that idea is very.
All right. So what we're talking about?
Maybe he wanted to put her up there so somebody could see her.
I mean, this sort of echoes what one of the detectives had said earlier, that from that position, the houses all around that building could see her. And what I thought about that was, but they didn't. And that fucking sucks for this girl, because she has no parents. The only guardian she has, they even say she's the guardian of the grandmother.
Yeah.
And then, you know, I don't know. It's just that her body isn't honored in any way. It's just like, I don't know. That just really disturbed me a lot. Just that even though the whole like village could see her, nobody did until the morning. But anyway, then we cut to the almost last scene, where Mom is going on a bus tour, and Do-jun is seeing her off, but he says, hey Ma, you left this at the junk man's place, and it's her acupuncture kit, and it has been burned by the fire. And so she doesn't say anything, but she sort of gets up and walks away from him, because she knows that he knows what she did. And
he knows that, you know, he did do it. I feel like is another like big thing from that. It's like, oh, now we know. He knows he got off scot-free for a murder.
Well, some murder is, I mean, it was an accident. But...
Well, I mean, he did hit her head with a rock.
I don't. Do you think he intentionally was aiming for her head, or
he was trying to hurt her physically? I don't necessarily think that he's like an evil character or anything. Like, obviously not, but like he obviously resorts to like physical violence with stuff like this, and she was somebody who couldn't defend herself.
Yeah. I guess I saw him in a more innocent light. However, pulling her body up like that up the stairs is so gruesome, and just so. I will never forget that image. It's very hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not bloody, and it's not, you know, it's not like you wouldn't think it'd be that hard, but it is, just because of the lack of respect for her body and her person. But anyway, on the bus, these old women are dancing in the aisle, and
this is my favorite scene.
The camera like pushes in on Mother, and she's sitting in her chair, but she opens up her acupuncture kit, and she believes that there's a meridian on your thigh that you can, if you hit it with the acupuncture needle, it will wipe away your memories, and you won't have to deal with hard memories. And so she gives the acupuncture to herself, and then she gets up, and then she joins the dance.
And I like that scene is just, I mean, like, I like jaw dropping to me, because like it's almost really funny at first, because I mean, you know, imagine, like, I couldn't think of a better juxtaposition of like people without a care in the world, like doing such a silly thing, and how insane this revelation she just had is like all those things at once, you know, nearly evaded, you know, being caught. My son knows, you know, he knows that he did this. He knows, like, we all know. I just have to live with this now. This is just our life now. And then there's all these women who are just like, even the idea of a bus tour is kind of like something you only do for like fun, you know, and they're dancing and they're just having this great time. And she's just sitting with the weight of the world on her shoulders. And then I just feel like what a perfect like way to just show that feeling of like, she now is just, you know, she can't take it. Like, she cannot take this reality. She needs to escape.
Well, in the beginning where we saw her dancing, makes sense in this context. Now, chronologically, that happens after she kills the junk man. So we see her sort of like a flipped shot, like as she's walking through as she's walking through the field, the camera is following her instead of her walking toward the camera. The camera is, at her back. So I love that too, because it kind of comes full circle. But anyway, that is where the dancing comes in, like chronologically. But it makes sense. I mean, oh my God. So the lengths that she's gone to protect her son are grotesque and evil. And she didn't even really think about it, because her whole mission statement is to protect her son. But when that goes too far, this is what you end up with. You end up with murder and insanity. I mean, I don't know if you think she's insane, but that dance is...
She's not right. From the first, not even the first scene of her dancing, but the first scene of actually just seeing her, it's she's not right, because in that first scene, she cuts her own thumb and then she gets blood all over him and she's like, "You're bleeding." Oh my, she just is so single, tunnel visioned, and that's not good. Obviously it wasn't good, this whole kid's life, and she is naive about the world, and I don't know, it's a cruel world that she's in and she's not equipped to deal with it. And I'm not saying she's she definitely is in the wrong, obviously. You can't get with her on this, but you can understand her motivations and the world that she's living in, why this must be done. I live for my son. Son's in jail. I don't, what am I have to do this, even though we can see from the outside is no, actually helping him would be you inflicting the torment of being jailed to this other I feel like
Yeah.
Bong Joon-ho, everything else, he's so intentional with how he does things to just enforce that this is wrong, there's no getting around this. This is a wrong thing to do. That other guy taking the fall for her son, it's that's wrong. No ifs, ands, or buts. That person does not deserve it, And Bong Joon-ho makes sure that. And same thing with the girl, the girl who was murdered. It's just this is taking advantage of a really horrible situation for this girl, but I just like that, because then it just kind of leads you to be that's the decision she made, and what do you think about it?
Okay. Well, there were a couple of things I wanted to talk to you about. One, did the poison that she gave him cause his intellectual disability?
I don't know. I do think that this is something sometimes this is the thing that I really struggle with in this movie is I don't know enough about the subject to have an informed opinion, but part of me just feels like this is perhaps a problematic portrayal of, somebody with, a disability. And that to me is it's big flaws. It's kind of it's not really explained what it is. It's kind of just a general thing. And I mean, he is violent. He's violent, and his violence leads to, death. And it just kind of seems not the best portrayal.
Yeah, it is really messy, because when I don't know how many times I've seen this movie, but my first thought the first time I saw it was that the poison caused him to have this intellectual disability. But then I thought, well, what if he was born that way? He's always had this disability. Maybe that's what, was difficult for her. And she wanted, to end it all when he was 5. But she goes to one of her acupuncture clients and she takes a picture of him when he was 4 or 5. And the woman like cleans up the picture, and because it's old and it's been like worn and stuff, and so on her computer she like cleans up the picture, and mother says like, he was so beautiful there, or he was so beautiful then, and it's like, he was a little child, like that was more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So you're seeing your son as like a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yes.
And somebody had posited that he doesn't have an intellectual disability. He is in PTSD.
That could be too.
And that causes some memory problems and, everything else. Now, the way he's portrayed in the beginning of the movie seems like he does have a disability, not beyond the memory stuff.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess that's just what I struggle with, is just this kind of like nebulous Forrest Gump vibe, where, I mean, it is kind of like, I'm the one asking questions, so I'm not equipped to have like an informed opinion on this, but I would be interested to hear how, people with disabilities or who have experience with disabilities, would feel by this. Like if it is, if they think this is problematic, because then I would defer and be like, yeah. Well, it feels it feels problematic to me.
I think it is problematic.
It is problematic.
It's not, everybody in the town is like, he's an R word.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, we don't even know what that means.
Yeah.
But everyone just sort of labels him as that.
Yeah.
Like, he's stupid. She even calls him an idiot at one point. And, but what?
It's a really cruel depiction, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's cruel. And yeah, I could see this obviously being like really offensive to someone. And like it's tough because when you watch the movie, in my head, I kind of more so, you kind of have to, well, you don't have to do anything, but like, it makes sense for this story, but it doesn't change the fact that the depiction itself is flawed. And yes, that probably would change how the story goes, but it probably is worth doing that to have an actual realistic thing and not just be like, oh, this guy, he was diagnosed with stupid. Like, that just really feels like what they say.
Well, I know that some people in this country who are advocates for prisoners on death row have pointed out that, and I don't have the statistics, but there have been a large number of people with a very low IQ who have been executed in this country. And so maybe what Bong Joon-ho is trying to say here with both Do-jun and Jung-pal, being institutionalized, is that Korea has a problem dealing with people they consider to be R words.
Yeah.
And so, but it does bother me because I'm like, what is this guy's deal? Now, I just assumed that the poison had caused it, because that fits with the story to me. But he, it goes from sort of like his kind of slowness and his like going along with whatever in the beginning to the memory being the problem later on in the story. So that's a little bit messy, Bong Joon-ho.
And I mean, it's like the general depiction of this character too is that he's dangerous. He, harasses, like, because even that idea of like, oh, he doesn't know any better is just kind of like, I don't think that's right. It's like, I don't think, like, definitely is not like a just a run of the mill normal thing that, oh, if you have an intellectual disability, you probably harass people. Like, I don't no, the opposite is very much true. And that is what like the spotlight should be on. And I just feel like he's not a likable character, and he is, I don't know, portrayed as dangerous, creepy to young girls, and violent, and and that's not great.
Yeah. Also, like when he's in the bar, the bar lady's daughter comes in and she's a schoolgirl, and that schoolgirl likes him. But if I've got the ages right, they are at least 9 years apart in age, which grossed me out until I saw that that's Jin-tae's girlfriend, which grossed me out even worse.
Oh, yeah.
So I think Bong Joon-ho also has this thing about older men preying on younger women.
Yeah.
Like we saw that in Parasite. When I presented that movie to Quinn's film class, I called the son a dirtbag. And they were like, no, he's okay. I'm like, are you kidding me?
He's literally trying to date. He is dating. Like, how old was she?
He kisses her.
Like,
she's like
16, 15. Yeah, it's horrible.
And he's at least 22.
Yeah, it's gross.
It's not good.
Because he also like pressures her a lot. Like it's not like just a normal. It wouldn't be normal either way. But on top of it, he also is creepy.
Yeah, so I feel like this is one of the things that's important to him because it's, shows up in a couple of movies. But yeah, it could do with a rewrite, I guess. But just a couple of pieces of trivia. So because of phonetic differences between English and Korean, both mother and murder are spelled the same when translated to Korean characters. So the movie title Made is a play on this similarity, suggesting both mother and murder. While filming the opening sequence of mothers dancing, director Bong Joon-ho danced together with Hye-ja Kim to make her feel less nervous.
And you can witness this.
Yes. I have the DVD, so it's an extra on the DVD. But if you go to YouTube, there the making of documentary is there. It's there in Korean. But you can see at 1:32, I think it is, Bong dancing, behind the camera. It is so cute.
It's very sweet.
Meeting Hye-ja Kim. Meeting Hye-ja Kim was the chief inspiration for director Bong Joon-ho. He met with her frequently over the development of the script to make sure it suited her skills. Yeah, I think he worked on it for like 5, 6, 7 years, something.
Wow.
But he did it with her in mind, and he has said that if she would have said no, it would never have happened. That's all I have.
Do you want to read it?
Well, now I feel really different than I did before.
I know. It's like, I think both can exist. I think something can have a really problematic portrayal that is objectively bad, and then at the same time have scenes that are good. And it's good to critique them and to ask for better things. But I don't think you necessarily have to throw the whole thing away. Because I think that there are problematic portrayals, and everybody can learn. I'm not trying to excuse this. Like, I really am not trying to be like, oh, get over it. Because like, if this deeply offends somebody and they're like, fuck the whole movie, I'm like, yeah that's completely valid. Like, I derive a lot of emotional satisfaction from the scenes with the mother, and at the same time, I do not enjoy the depiction of the son. Both exist to me.
I don't know. I kind of do like the son, but but the next time I watch this movie, it's going to be probably a little bit different. But like, I think there's a shot in the trailer where he's in the back of the cop car, and the cop has just put the cuffs on him, and he holds them up to like his mom. Like, look, Mom, I got cuffs on. And even, like, there's this thing, I guess, in Korean society where the criminal has to reenact the crime. And so when he shows up to do that, they have a mask over his mouth, but he pulls it down so he can, like, wave to his mom. It's just, like, it's stupid.
Yeah.
And it's so sweet. And, yeah, and I like those scenes with Jin-tae in the beginning because I don't know. They're just, Jin-tae is trying to take up for him, but only to a point.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? And I just like this whole thing too of, I mean, really it's about the mother.
Yeah.
You know, and really about this idea of what if everything that we value in a mother was like taken to the extreme. There's like weird suggestions of inappropriateness, like when she watches him piss against a wall and she's looking at him, and
I think it's like
wow.
Yeah, to me it's like an absolute lack of boundaries between the two. Like it still is like a mother and son relationship, but as it should be, there should be boundaries between, there is inappropriate touching, as you say, and there's situations that are just kind of don't do that, but to her it's they're almost the same being,
She even says that. She says something very similar to that we are the same. One of her clients says that his eyes are a work of art. They're like a deer's eyes. And she goes, like mine. And yeah, so she's just constantly thinking of him as an extension of herself. And some of that seems like you would sleep with a 4-year-old in your bed, maybe.
Yeah.
That's not creepy.
But he's infantilized by her.
Completely. And he doesn't like it. And every time he pushes back, then there's this tension, and very interesting.
Yeah.
Project. I'm glad he made the movie, and it is really beautiful. And I don't know that much about aspect ratios and all that stuff, but it's filmed in this very wide screen way, which is usually, I guess, reserved for scenic shots and stuff. But there's one shot, I think I put it on Instagram or whatever. It's the shot after Do-jun has pissed against the wall, but it's this blue wall and just this tiny figure of mother. It's almost like a Western, those Western shots where people are really small. And I just love that so much. But anyway, I like it a lot. I don't know how I would rate it. I guess a 4.
Yeah, I was going to say 4 acupuncture needles.
Yeah. The Handmaiden, I think I'd give it higher. 4.75.
4.75 thimbles.
Yeah. But I'm glad you chose these movies because I enjoy them both a lot. And I just get more out of them the more I watch them.
Yeah.
Hi, WoHos. Just want to thank you so much for listening. This is the first episode of season 1, and we have decided to include thrillers along with horror movies. And we're going to try to do the original remake format when we can. And when we can't, we will try to find an American movie that matches the original somehow. Maybe pair an international movie with an American movie. But these were Mac's picks. I think he did awesome. Later in the season, we'll do some of my favorite movies. Next week, there is an episode that I recorded with Devin, and it was when we were talking about loneliness, and we look at 2 of Wim Wenders' films, Paris, Texas, and Wings of Desire. After that, Mac and I will be back, and we will be talking about the French film from 1955, whose name I will butcher, but it is something like Le Diabolique. And there was a remake in 1996, the year that Mac was born. And I've heard it is terrible. And after that, there's going to be a Quinny-sode to be determined later. And then after that, we'll do The Vanishing, which is probably in my top 5 for sure. It's a Dutch movie. If you haven't seen it, please seek it out and watch it. It is unique and weird and extremely upsetting, and a fantastic portrait of a serial killer. a fantastic discussion about what it means to love someone. So I hope that you will come back next week when we're looking at the Wim Wenders films. If you want, of course, you can get in touch with us on social media. I would love to hear from you. And don't go into the basement.